Jim, in spite of your achievements in athletics and film, I really want to talk about your leadership in economic and social justice and more about America and your advocacy across the board. Just for the sake of setting the stage, our podcast is called The Exceptionals. And so we're talking with people that have done, like you, exceptional things. And what's interesting, since the beginning of time, over 100 billion people have occupied planet Earth. And you know what makes you unique? You're the only person, you know this, in the NCAA Hall of Fame, in the for football, for lacrosse, in the NFL Hall of Fame. You've done over 50 films, but after an incredible career in all areas, you also developed American, and before that, the Black Economic Union. And at age 85, you are just as relevant today as you have been throughout your life. So Sam Huff, about 10 years ago, I had breakfast with him out at the Marriott at Dulles. And he said, Jim Brown was the greatest athlete that ever played the game. And that you never said any bad thing about him, and he never said a bad thing about you. So I'll start with that. I recall that you said three things philosophically. You said participation is not about competition, but setting the standard. And in football, you dominate with your physicality and overwhelm with your mentality. And the mark of a champion is consistency. So with that philosophy as a point of departure, would you describe your source of motivation in everything you've done?
Well, Carlos, it's good to see you. And I'm going to give you a surprise. I'm still working at it. I'm still active and still relevant. My family is active and relevant. So I'm looking forward to the future.
You're looking forward to what?
I'm looking forward to the future because all the pieces are in place.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Absolutely. You have a lot to look forward to. So, can you explain this? When you left St. Simon's Island in Georgia and you went up to Manhasset, what was your life like and what drove you to dominate so many sports when you were at Manhasset High School?
Well, you know, it was a strange upbringing because St. Simon's is a unique kind of place. And I had no father with me. My mother was a domestic, and she did everything she could do for me, but I still had an inferiority complex, believe it or not. It grew a little bit into who I am today. But the development at St. Simon was great for me because I didn't mind being alone. I could think for myself, and I didn't need, to lean upon anybody because my mother, who was a great lady, had passed away and there was no father. So I had to either go down tubes or stand up like a man.
What made you stand up like a man? What gave you the strength, the inner strength?
Well, when you're little and you don't have a father and mother that you go home to, you look around. You see quality. You see people that are interested in you. You see people that want to exploit you. And I was fortunate because Mr. Willis had a store there, and he would always give me goodies and advice. And Mr. Willis multiplied like 3 or 4 times because I met some other men just like him. And because of them, I was able to have some type of self-esteem and yet, you know, do the things that I'm supposed to do.
That's tremendous. So the underpinning of your social activism was what? Were you inspired by Paul Robeson or the people around you, or what propelled you forward?
With the people that I mentioned to you are all Caucasian, all white.
Right.
And they were good people. But the racial issue was strong. So I was fortunate to have good white people in my corner, teaching me the right thing and supporting me and encouraging me. And then on the other hand, Ku Klux Klan was out in full gear. And what they stood for was something that I hated, and it motivated me because they said I was inferior. I said, never, never inferior. And so as a lone child of that family, my great grandmother and so forth, I grew up with an attitude to be strong and to be successful.
When we were up at Syracuse, one of the athletes, one of the football players, asked you, were you the greatest running back ever? And I'll never forget your answer. How would you respond to that?
What did I say?
Up at Syracuse, we were up there, and one of the guys on the football team asked you if you were the greatest running back in history. And how did you respond?
You know, I don't recall.
No, you said, as I recall, you were not the greatest running back in history. There were some things that you could do that other backs couldn't do, and some things they could do that you couldn't do. I thought that was an interesting answer. And you asked the guy, you said, are you the greatest lover in history? That was your response.
That's a very interesting answer,
But
and I do recall it.
so,
Because I didn't play blocking back. I played running back. And in football, you have 22 men that are starters. And you have different assignments, different body types. Some of the things that are different, but the running backs and the quarterbacks and the ends got all the credit.
right,
So I had great respect for those other positions, but I didn't want to play those positions. I wanted to play the one I played.
right.
But not with no disrespectful attitude toward those who didn't have the glamour position to play.
Right. The other thing that's interesting, you were at the very top of your game at that time, and you left and went into the film business. Very few athletes leave at the top of their game, not to disparage anybody, I won't even mention anybody, but that was very unique. What propelled that decision for you to leave with all of those records behind you and to change careers?
Well, the funny thing about life is that I didn't look at myself first as a football player. I looked at myself as a black man in a world that wasn't fair, and I was going to do everything I could do to make changes. So I was working on two levels. One level, the commercial one, was okay, he's a great football player. But then the other side of it, I had to be a humanitarian. And I was truly a humanitarian because my passion was that to change that BS and to recognize human beings based on the quality of who they are. And so it was a little different. Most athletes get carried away with being admired as an athlete. But I graduated from Syracuse. I worked for Pepsi-Cola. I did all the things that a football player didn't do, but I brought my football playing abilities with me. But my emphasis was on social change, making things equal, helping young people, all the things that are not prejudiced, and all the things that makes for a better world.
One of the things you did was to form the Black Economic Union. And under your leadership, thousands of businesses were created and developed. What was the overall impetus for you to do that? Why did you step into that space?
Well, I was fortunate enough to get a job with Pepsi-Cola. And there was a guy by the name of Harvey Russell, great man, an executive there, black man. Very few blacks had executive jobs with major corporations. And I admired him. I worked for Pepsi for a while, and I realized that because of my football background, I would get a lot of breaks, but I didn't want to apply those breaks just to me. I wanted to apply them to other individuals who didn't have the same opportunities I had. And so in my soul, I was always appreciative of the people that helped me when I was young and didn't know what was going on and had no father. And it was like payback. Because I asked one person, what do you think about me trying to do some things to help my people? He said, don't worry, Big Jim, you're doing it already. So I had an automatic thing about helping those who did not have an opportunity to help themselves.
In June of 1957, Muhammad Ali refused to be inducted into the draft on religious grounds. And you pulled together a summit in June in Cleveland. I believe it was Mayor Stokes, yourself, and 10 marquee named athletes to support Muhammad Ali. That included Kareem, Bill Russell, Short Man, Jim Shorter, Curtis McClinton, and others. What was the impetus for you to do that? You pulled the group together and you had a summit and you stood behind or with Muhammad Ali. Would you describe that?
Well, you see, during those days, there were exceptional athletes and exceptional people. And there were people that wanted to break the barriers down and be looked upon as a great American. And Muhammad Ali became a Nation of Islam showpiece, but he didn't allow that to stop him from being a hell of a guy and a lot of courage. And because he was a great fighter, it just emphasized his, character as a person. And today that it was very difficult for a black man to get any kind of platform. So here it was, the greatest athletes that have lived, and I had most of them under wraps to work to free human beings and to back up those activists in the community that were trying to make change for their people. So I came up in an era where, Bill Russell and all of those kinds of individuals were accessible and intelligent. And we did make some changes.
You certainly did. Let's talk about American, which teaches life management skills, as you well know, and you teach people to take responsibility. I have been in the presence of many of the people in the program in your living room, and it's the only time in my life where I've been in a space where there were like 2 dozen black folk and everybody waits for the other person to finish before they speak. There are no interruptions. Everybody's quiet, respectful, and polite. It's like magic. How did you manage to exercise the leadership to get people to stop, assess their life, and decide how they want to live through your program? And what are some of the successes that you've had with respect to reducing recidivism, increasing completion of high school, people going on to community colleges, starting business and being very successful? Thousands of people around the country. Could you expand on American, please?
American was created because there was a lack of let me put it a different way. American was created because the mental aspect of life had to be addressed. And there was Black people, and all they could do is be a domestic, play football, basketball, track, and so forth. And that was what I did not like, I did not support. I liked the intellectual aspect of life and really supported that and went against the grain of being popular and being almost like an outcast because the powers to be did not want African Americans to recognize their collective power and to use it properly. So the Black Economic Union pointed out the intellectual side of life and how you can work together and make change. And the change was not taken away from anything, but adding to something. So we got on the side of goodness and kindness and respect and love. And that's a very powerful ingredient when you do that. And when you can play a little football, play a little basketball like Bill, Curtis McClinton football, the system was thrown for a loop because they hated the fact that we were activists and loved the fact that we were football players, athletes. But they had to take both of them, the activist and the football player and the athlete. So it was like putting the system on trial because their own greed wouldn't allow them to sacrifice the athletes for the intellectuals. So we had a powerful group of intellectuals, a powerful group of athletes, and they were all very conscious of being a human being, being treated with respect, and carrying yourself in a manner that your family would be proud of you. Simple things, not only for Black folks, but for all people.
It's profound. You have, as I understand, you have known every president since, I believe, LBJ, and you worked with many different presidents, particularly President Nixon. Which president, not to be judgmental, did you find to be most responsive to try and improve things in the Black community?
Well, I'll tell you, the one person that comes to mind, there's two of them, Kennedy, John F. Kennedy.
Right.
He was a great man and accessible. And accessible is an interesting word because to have that particular trait in your pocket and you can use it anytime you want it gives you great power. But John F. Kennedy, the Kennedy brothers, Bobby, I think became head of the FBI. I'm not sure exactly right now.
Justice.
yes. And Nixon was like a contradiction to my posturing, because people didn't understand that I had to deal with what America was like, what the power was at, how to change it. I had to do all those things. And whenever you get access to a president like Nixon, and he likes you, and he takes certain consideration just because you wanted a light, you showed him what it meant to the people, and he was able to accomplish certain things. Well, history will say, well, you played up to Nixon. I said, yeah, and Nixon played up to me too. So anyway, that's kind of what was happening.
I want to get your views on leadership. Just being a leader, is it something an individual can do, or is it something that involves a collective of multiple individuals?
Well, I tell you, you can find leadership everywhere to a certain degree, because human beings look out for leaders. And when we say leaders, we're talking about somebody that people will follow. And normally, if people are following you, you're either real, you're German Nazi Germany, or you're Martin Luther King. But you're both leaders. And my reason for economic development and where I can, and all the things that I dealt with during my time and my little power, it was because I didn't look at myself as a leader, but I automatically became a leader because of the positions that I took and the things that I rejected made me different, but different with the masses, but a hero with the poor people who were left out of the circle. So it's a little complicated, but that's the best I can give you right now.
Did your service as an officer in the Army, I think you achieved the rank of captain in the United States Army. Did that have any bearing on your attitude about leadership?
Say that again?
You achieved the rank of captain in the United States Army. Did that position and that experience have anything to enhance your skills as a leader?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. But you know, you can lead the birds to the bees and the horses, you know, but that's not like human beings dealing with following you and trusting you, and you being able to deliver to them a better way of life, possibly a better way of life. So the thing about my leadership was to get somebody to get off their own butts and not look around for leaders, but look around for the things that will make you a better person and make you also a person that will take responsibility for themselves. So sometimes it gets a little complicated when you try to explain it. But, you know, Nixon was a leader and so was John F. Kennedy, but they were different. So you have to be careful on how you label them and what your expectations are for them. And I would refuse to be prejudiced against white people because all white people were not bad. That's simple.
Sure.
Actually, I generalize and put a race of people down because they have the Ku Klux Klan and white citizen groups and so forth and so on, because they also had the humanitarians and people that really had heart and risk their life to help us. So wasn't an easy yes or no or right or wrong. You had to really do some thinking. And I positioned myself where the radicals didn't like it. The conservatives, they liked it. But then the Ku Klux Klan didn't like it. But I stuck to my guns and delivered some really outstanding young people because they had a formula they could follow to compress their passion, to exhibit their dedication to positive change.
Okay. What advice at this point, given that the nation is so polarized politically, what advice would you give to elected officials in government, and after that, business leaders, and lastly, to families, and just coping with the trends of trying to bridge the gap so we can be more cohesive as a people, as Americans?
That's a great question. Great question. And I would be foolish to try to give you an answer. There are many parts of what you're talking about. Because even when you take the groupings, or you say Black Americans, but then you take high yellow Americans. I got mad about it, yeah. And you take poor Americans, rich Americans. So you're not going to cover it easily. You have to take a position on an individual level of righteousness as best you know it, and execute that regardless of what anybody else is doing. That's my way of looking at it. I'm a great American. When I say that, I mean I pay my dues, and I have respect for the country. And I'm also aware of the things in slavery and all the bad things that have happened to this country. But still, out of all the countries, I feel America is the best. And so here I sit with you, and you're throwing me this hard situation. And the best I can tell you is that I'm not prejudiced. Sometimes even the gangsters have good guys in it that got in it for the wrong reason. Anyway, next question.
Well, first of all, let me thank you. You are one of the best friends I've ever had. Consistent and loyal. The only gripe I have with you is you've never let me beat you in chess. But a lot of people don't realize you are an incredible chess player. But I love you and your family, and I appreciate everything you do for this country. And thank you for being on the podcast.
Thank you, Carlos. Carlos Campbell, intellectual.
Thank you.